Hello, everyone, and welcome back to this show. Hopefully, there are going to be no technical issues as it was yesterday. Only after the live stream, I recognize while making clips from the stream itself that almost entirely live stream. During the live stream, I was frozen. Video was not really working. All the sound was okay. So hopefully today it's going to be better. I remove back screen, as you can see. So maybe this will remove pressure on the notebook a little bit. Anyways, it is of course 9th of 9th of January 2026. Happy Friday, everybody, and wish you a great upcoming weekend. And and I can see Michael Kennedy is commenting. We could hear you. Thank you, Mike, for a comment. Yes, I realized that sound was not bad, but video was frozen almost entirely. That's why it is necessary to check time to time during the stream chat. Probably members of our community were writing about it, but I missed it. So yes, it is 9th of January, and what a day, dear friends. We have a second deployment of Oreshnik missile, hypersonic medium-range missile system by Russian armed forces in direction of underground facilities in western Ukraine, in Lvov area, not far away from NATO borders, let's say this way. Although there is also plenty of other developments, and I will share in the news segment some of the news at least that Russian media is reporting about it. Hopefully, you will find news update interesting, informative, and in that case, please click that like button, leave some commentary, share link of this video with your friends if you can. Will be very helpful, especially in the circumstances when my channels on both platforms, YouTube and Rumble, where I'm streaming simultaneously, are in shadow ban, and it is almost impossible to reach wider audience. Definitely without your help, it's completely impossible. So if you can, please help me with that. And yes, if there will be any questions through support platforms, PayPal, Boosty, or Super Chat on Rumble, I will react on it after the news segment. And okay, let's go through some news now. And as I said, what a day! What a day! Second deployment of Oreshnik missile systems. I wake up this morning to this news, and just about hour ago, approximately, Russian media outlets report about statements that was made by Defense Ministry of the Russian Federation about last night's strikes that took place not just in direction of Western Ukraine, but also other areas, military, logistical, energy infrastructure on the Kyiv-controlled territory was targeted. And let me go through statement of Russian Defense Ministry. So Russian forces used Oreshnik missiles, and this is important, missiles, by the way. So potentially it was not just one Oreshnik missile system that was deployed, but two, maybe more. So Russian forces used Oreshnik missiles in a massive attack on critical facilities in Ukraine. The Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation reported, and we have a quote from the statement: massive strike was launched using long-range land and sea-based precision weapons, including Oreshnik medium-range mobile ground-based missile system, as well as the strike drones against the critical targets on Ukrainian territory. The statement reads, Russian military forces also destroyed drone manufacturing facilities used by the Ukrainian armed forces to raid Vladimir Putin's residence, as well as energy infrastructure supporting their enemy's military-industrial complex. All attack objectives were achieved. And I'm frozen there again. Okay. Okay, I'm frost again, isn't it? I don't even know what to do in this case. I will turn off I did turn off VPN. Hopefully it will work a little better now. I don't even know what to say. But am I frozen again? It's okay now. Okay. Seems like I'm back. So, dear friends, just in case, if I may, I will repeat the news. So today is a second time when Russian militaries deployed the Oreshnik missile system, potentially missiles to target critical infrastructure on a Kiev-controlled territory. And let's go through statement of Defense Ministry of the Russian Federation. So Russian forces used Oreshnik missiles in a massive attack on the critical facilities in Ukraine. Defense Ministry of the Russia stated the massive strike was launched using long-range land and sea-based precision weapons, including the Oreshnik medium-range mobile ground-based missile system, as well as the strike drones against the critical targets on Ukrainian territory. The statement of the Defense Ministry says Russian military forces also destroyed drone manufacturing facilities used by the Ukrainian armed forces to raid Vladimir Putin's residence, as well as energy infrastructure supporting the enemy's military industrial complex. All attack objectives were achieved, the department noted. Any terrorist actions by the criminal Ukrainian regime will continue to be met with a response, the ministry also emphasized. And many media outlets are claiming now that this was a Russian retaliation for a recent attack on Russia's Russian president's residency in Novgorod region. And I have different opinion. I don't think this was a retaliatory strike for that particular attack on the residency. After all, Kiev regime and its NATO backers were targeting Russian president's residency during that massive drone attack. Also, according to some reports, command and control center of strategical forces that allegedly are located exactly in that residency area. And this Russian strike is about targeting military, logistical, energy infrastructure. No attacks from Russian side on decision-making centers of Kiev regime or its NATO backers. So I would not counter this last night Russian attack as a retaliation necessarily for Ukrainian NATO attack on Russian president and his residency. I mean, two different stuff. So this attack probably was pre-planned for quite a while and was launched past night. But anyways, we might agree to disagree on this matter. We might have different opinions. I said straight away that I don't expect Russian leadership to authorize strikes on leadership of Kiev regime or decision-making centers in the Bankova district, for example, in Kiev, right? And it did not happen. There was no such attacks. Anyway, dear friends, probably you are interested to see video footage that is available for now, and probably during the day more videos will appear of this Russian strike. And let me show you some of the videos that I shared already on my Telegram and Twitter X pages. For example, on this video you can see arrival of Oreshnik warheads, and as far as I can tell, by the way, each Oreshnik has 30 to 36 warheads in it, right? So let's watch the video. So that's it. Let's watch it again. On the left on corner, you can see this rapid arrival of the warheads. By the way, these are hypersonic missile systems, of course, and speed is tremendous. And that's why these warheads look like a thunder, isn't it? Because their speed is, of course, nowhere near to light speed, but It's a quite impressive speed, nevertheless, way above 6,000-7,000 kilometers. I think all the exact information is obviously classified. Also, there are other videos that I can show you. This one, for example. Or let's say from other angle. Now this video. Let's watch it again. Well, impressive stuff for sure. And after the strikes, by the way, in area that was targeted, this video was made, which indicates fire in place. So probably there was a massive fire after this arrival. And of course, all sorts of speculations are beginning now. What exactly was targeted by Oreshnik missile system? There are two main versions that not really contradicting each other, if you think about it. One is that biggest underground gas reservoir, gas storage facility was targeted with the Oreshnik missile systems in the Lvov region, yet again not far away from borders with the NATO countries. And there are other rumors that are circulating is that underground command and control center was targeted, where there was not just officers of a Kyiv regime, but also NATO member states. Well, underground bunker or command and control center could be located in an area where this underground gas storage facility was, because you can imagine there is a lot of places, right, in this underground gas storage facility where you can build there, if you want to, command and control center. So both can be true, but maybe personally, I think it was a gas storage facility. Probably NATO no longer has a big number of its officers on the Kyiv-controlled territory after several Russian strikes, including on underground bunkers that eliminated dozens of them, right? According to reports that we have seen. So most likely this was an attack on a gas storage facility. After all, there are reports that are in the Lvov region, soon after these strikes, gas supply went off. So there was some difficulties in the Lvov region in regards to a gas supply. So it's an underground storage facility most likely, although we will learn some more. I have no doubts about it. During the day, probably we will learn some more about this about these strikes. And when it comes to targeting or Western military personnel, by the way, I will just remind you that yesterday I shared the video information during my video update that according to pro-Russian partisans that are operating on a Kyiv-controlled territory, as a result of one of the previous strikes of the Russian Federation in Odessa region, about 10 NATO officers and military personnel was killed there. Two of them allegedly were US military personnel, and about 6 was a British military personnel. Probably because reports said that these NATO officers were training Kyiv regime's forces, special forces in special maritime operations. I can assume that in case of British military, it was a special boat service personnel, and potentially in case of Americans, maybe there were a couple of US Navy SEALs, maybe. But yet again, I try to find out more about these strikes, but very little information is available, by the way, on this matter for now. Maybe sometime in the future we will learn a little more exactly who was neutralized. So, yet again, even though I'm skeptical that in the Lvov region command and control center was targeted, where dozens of NATO officers were operating, but could be a case. Maybe that rumor that is circulating now has a ground after all. Maybe. Anyways, definitely significant message, I think, from Russian side towards not just Kiev regime, but first of all towards the Western backers of the Kiev regime. Second demonstration of the capabilities of Oreshnik. And I remind you, dear friends, that just recently, President of Belarus stated that Oreshnik missile systems are on duty now in Belarus. According to plans, 10 Oreshnik missile systems will be deployed, maybe already are deployed in Belarus, and they can reach literally any point on European part of Eurasian continent. And seems like, well, there is some issues with video again, man. Unbelievable. I don't even know what to make of it, man. It's I guess this is an issue of StreamYard itself at this point, because I'm not using VPN. It's okay now. Okay, it must be StreamYard, because I don't know, man. I don't know what else it could be, or maybe internet speed is just too bad. But hopefully, at least sound is good. So I will just remind you, dear friends, as I already said, that Oreshnik missile systems are on duty in Belarus. According to Lukashenko, president of Belarus, up to 10 Oreshniks will be stationed there that can reach literally any point, anywhere in Europe. And also, obviously, Russian Oreshnik missile systems can be deployed even westwards in the Kaliningrad region of the Russian Federation, from where Oreshnik can reach even further if necessary. And obviously, Oreshnik missiles are deployed on mainland Russia too. And this is clearly some sort of a message, must be some sort of a message to NATO backers of the Kiev regime. First of all, probably European NATO backers to think about their next steps, because restraint of Russian policy towards their aggression of NATO countries towards Russia might change. This restraint policy might change, and who knows? Next time there will be some massive provocation from NATO countries against Russia. These Oreshnik missiles might fly not just on the Kiev-controlled territory, but somewhere else too. Maybe, just say. Anyways, dear friends, I think today all the media outlets worldwide are going to talk about this Oreshnik stuff. So probably my channel will be one of the first who will share with you this information. Let's continue with some other news, right? And for example, we have this report from TASS news agency that Russian armed forces liberated Bratskaya settlement in the Dnipropetrovsk region. Russian offensive continues. Initiative is in Russian hands all along their front line, and in no circumstances either Kiev regime or their NATO backers will be able to regain initiative in this proxy war that West is waging against Russia. Also, RT is reporting that, while losing on the ground, by the way, right, while losing on the battlefield, the Kiev regime and its NATO backers, out of desperation, I guess, are intensifying their terror campaign, as it was expected and as I predicted it way before. They are intensifying this terrorist activity, and reports are that yet another Russian-bound tanker was attacked in the Black Sea. And the report is that an oil tanker on a route to Russian port of Novorossiysk on the Black Sea has been attacked in the Black Sea. According to maritime news website Lloyd's List, the Palau flagged Elbus was sailing east about 30 nautical miles of the Turkish coastline on Wednesday when it experienced an unmanned maritime vehicle and their drone attack. Their outlet wrote on Thursday, citing its own intelligence data, the tanker diverted from its course and made a sharp turn towards the coast around the time of the attack. According to Turkish media, the Coast Guard received their distress call from their ship and their dispatched teams to the area, which escorted the vessel to the shore. The tanker is said to have been hit in its upper section. No injuries or pollution have been reported at the time of their publication. No statements has been issued by Turkish or Russian authorities. And I remind you, dear friends, that this is not the first such terrorist attack on Russia-bound tankers in the Black Sea or in the Mediterranean. For example, there were quite a number of such attacks previously, and obviously all these attacks are orchestrated by British military and intelligence services, because they are in charge of all the terrorist activity of formerly Kiev regime in Black Sea and in the southern sectors of their front lines. So Moscow knows this perfectly well. And when I'm saying that next time Russian Oreshnik missiles might take out targets not just on the Kiev controlled territory, but also somewhere else, this somewhere else, well, might be some British assets, British military, intelligence, terrorist assets. Just saying, it's a possibility. It's a possibility, I think. Let's continue with some other news. And you know what is interesting, dear friends? You know how noisy those ecologists are, isn't it, in the West? Or Greens, by the way, worldwide, but especially in the West. And you know what? It's not the first time, as I already said, that Russia-bound tankers were attacked at high seas. And you know what? You know, I'm monitoring Western so-called media, Western publications, and so on. And I have not seen even a single article, by the way, even a single report about dangers that this kind of terrorist activity is creating for nature, right? And I have not seen no statements from the so-called Greens, by the way, of Europe or the US for that matter. Not a single critical statements towards Kiev regime's terrorist activity from these so-called environmentalists. Although they love to make noise, by the way, right? They love to go into some museums and destroy artworks of some geniuses, right, of past times. But when it comes to actual work, no, they are not about that at all, which is just something to keep in mind. You know, when it comes to Western world, man, I said many times, practically everything is fake, and everyone, right, in the public field. And I think I am correct on that. And our Western members of our community from the Western countries probably will agree with me on that. They live in the West, right? And they see that these public figures, these so-called activists and stuff, all of them are freaking fake individuals, man, that have no principles in reality. Anyways, let's continue with some other news. And well, yesterday I mentioned during the live stream that Lindsey Graham, U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham, stated that after conversation with the Trump, U.S. President agreed to go ahead with the implementation of yet another anti-Russian laws by U.S. lawmakers, including anti-Russian law that is targeting with their additional sanctions, not just Russia itself, but first and foremost Russian partner states, right, trade partners. And Trump himself confirmed this information. Maybe yesterday, some members of our community had some doubts that Lindsey Graham was saying the truth, but Trump himself confirmed this information. So U.S. President Donald Trump has said he supports a bipartisan bill in the Congress that would authorize him to impose sweeping sanctions on Russia's trade partners. Trump made their remarks after Republican Senator Lindsey Graham said the president had green light legislation that would allow tariffs up to 500% on the countries that buy Russian oil and gas. Graham introduced the bill last year alongside Democrat Richard Blumenthal, and we have a quote from Trump here. I support it. I hope we don't have to use it, Trump told Fox News. Fox News' Sean Hannity in an interview aired on Thursday. We have bigger sanctions on Russia right now. Russia's economy is very bad, but they are much bigger than Ukraine, he added. And let me tell you, dear friend, Trump knows nothing about Russian economy, literally nothing about Russian economy, about state of Russian economy. If he knew anything, he would not say that Russian economy is bad or doing bad. Russian economy is doing quite okay, by the way, right? And Russian GDP is increasing on a higher rate than leading Western economies. And this is despite all these 20 or 30,000 sanctions that West already imposed on Russia. So Trump clearly is poorly informed, or he is just intentionally misleading the public, right? Both could be true, by the way. But when it comes to this anti-Russian bill, by the way, that Trump is talking about, let's see if Washington will actually go ahead and impose 500% tariffs on China, by the way. China in no circumstances will destroy relationships with Russia. It is completely impossible, not realistic, that China will stop buying Russian gas or oil. Not happening, right? Neither now, neither anytime, ever. And so as long as the fossil fuels are used, right, by humanity. And so I really like to see how far U.S. ruling class wants to go in their attempt to destroy American economy and American households, because they will introduce 500% tariffs on China, on Chinese goods, by the way. Gonna be a dark day for U.S. economy, because I don't think U.S. economy can actually survive this kind of stuff. Chinese economy will survive because Chinese export to U.S., even though U.S. is the biggest export market for China, if I remember correctly, it's only like 15% of Chinese exports overall, right? It's only like around 15%. So China can survive completely cutting trade with the U.S. And that's exactly what will happen in case of 500% tariffs being introduced. I mean, Chinese goods gonna become astronomically expensive, right? And no one gonna be able to buy anything made in China. So trade will die down eventually anyways, right, in that case. But what American economy gonna do in that case, man? How are they gonna survive? I have no freaking idea, right? So that's why I don't really take seriously these threats from US, either towards Russia, either towards China or other Russian trade partners. They can brag about anything. They can act as if they are like gangsters on the world stage. Okay, we used to this crap already, right? To see this crap from American politicians. But when it comes to real impact, well, I don't think US is in a position to actually do much more damage to Russia, for example, than they already did. And a number of times US officials themselves have acknowledged, isn't it, that there is so many sanctions already introduced that there is very little that actually can be done on top of that. It's factual, right? So let's see if they will dare to implement these 500% tariffs either on China or on India or any other Russian trade partner. I'm skeptical that they will go ahead with that. Nevertheless, interesting report, by the way, that while US senators, US president, other high-ranking officials and the public figures are threatening Russia non-stop, by the way, I mean 24/7, right, day in, day out. Interestingly enough, we have this report that Dmitriev allegedly traveled to France, to Paris, to meet with Witkoff and Kushner that were in France a couple of days ago and participating in a meeting of the so-called coalition of the willing, right? This is yet another anti-Russian bloc that was created by Russian enemies. And let me give you details on that. Kirill Dmitriev, the Russian president's special representative for investment and economic cooperation with the foreign countries, met in Paris with Donald Trump's special envoy Steve Witkoff and the American leader's son-in-law Jared Kushner, according to Axios, citing source familiar with the matter. President Trump's advisors Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner met with the Russian envoy Dmitriev in Paris on Wednesday to discuss the US plan to bring peace to Ukraine. It is noted that the White House allegedly wants a clear answer from Vladimir Putin to the US proposal to resolve their conflict. Early on Thursday, the French newspaper Monde claimed that Dmitriev visited Paris on January 7, the day after a meeting of the so-called Coalition of the Willing was held there. And, well, what can I say, by the way? What can I say? Trump's so-called peace plan, that was originally 28 points, isn't it? Was reduced to 20-point so-called peace plan that was presented, changed completely and presented by Zelensky about a week ago, isn't it? And I went through each and every this point in that globalist plan, which is basically a request from Russia to capitulate. That's what it is, right? Because I went through every single point from that 20, and with the exception of 2 or 3, by the way, none of them are points on which Russia will even waste a single second to discuss. That's how out of touch with reality those points and whomever wrote those points are, right? Couple of points, yes, there might be discussion, but rest is non-starter, by the way, and therefore I wonder what is going on in the heads of either Trump or Trump's special envoys, Witkoff and Kushner, or anyone else in the Trump's inner circle, that they think Russian president will actually waste time on this so-called globalist peace plan, in reality, demand of capitulation from Moscow. Of course, Moscow will reject it, right? Of course, Moscow will reject it as a non-starter, and we might hear statements from Russia about that so-called peace plan already on Monday. Could be the case. Maybe already on Monday. Next week, most likely, we will hear something from Moscow. But my take is that it's a non-starter, and I think I am on point there. There is no way Putin will agree on that capitulation act, by the way, that Western ruling class come up with. It's a nonsense, right? Anyways, dear friends, that's what is happening. Dmitriev, somewhat surprisingly, is still engaged, and that means Putin is still engaged in the talks with the White House, although this engagement, these talks, really don't make no sense no more, isn't it? Initially, after Trump's inauguration, for a month or 2 or 3 or even 5, okay, one could argue that, let's give Trump a time, so that he will sort it out, right? And he will actually move US out of this proxy war that West is waging against Russia, and he will try to de-escalate with Moscow. But it's a year already, Bob, right? Year has passed, and nothing serious have come up from Washington. No indicators, not a single indicator that American ruling class or their representative in the White House, Trump, are about de-escalation. It's exactly the opposite, actually, and therefore I find it somewhat frustrating and strange, to say the least, that Kremlin, through its aides, or Russian president through its aides, Ushakov and Dmitriev, are still engaged in the talks with Washington. What for, man? Maybe I'm missing something. Very well might be the case, but I see no indicator that will justify this activity. maybe you have seen, by the way, maybe you understand better what's going on, but I don't. I really don't, and I'm not gonna pretend that I think this activity is gonna be fruitful. No, man, it's a waste of time, total waste of time. But anyways, maybe this activity is just a part of political game that Moscow is demonstrating that, you know what, just door is open, so you want to talk, let's talk. Okay, maybe it's just part of a game and nothing more, nothing serious. Could be the case. Not to allow Western ruling class to whine about Moscow being against negotiations. No, Moscow is not, and you see, Dmitriev is always moving around. They're talking to representatives of the Trump. Ushakov is active in this regards too. So how door is closed, man? We are for negotiations. Okay, let's talk. Maybe that's all it is, man. Just a freaking game. Because to expect any positive outcome from these talks with the White House is naive, extremely naive, right? And I don't think Russian president is naive. He is not. He cannot be, right? Anyways, dear friends, also interesting news that Russia secures the release of basketball player Kasatkin, who faced extradition from France to US. Kasatkin was exchanged for French citizen Vinatier. And Vinatier had been doing a prison term here in Russia for violating the foreign agent law and was also being probed on espionage charges. So there was exchange of prisoners between Russia and France, and the timing is quite interesting, I think, because a couple of days ago, President of France stated that he wants to have a conversation with Putin as soon as possible, and maybe this exchange is a part of a sort of preparations to such a conversation, such a phone call between Macron and Putin to take place. And if so, if my understanding of the situation is correct, then at any time, today, tomorrow, day after, or next week, or we might actually receive the information that there was a phone conversation between Macron and Putin. Maybe Macron will visit Russia. I doubt that, but maybe he will even visit Russia. Who knows, man? But Paris was very clear that they want to establish some sort of communication with Moscow, and I don't think Russian leadership will be principally against the talk itself, as they demonstrated already similar approach in regards to White House, right? You want to talk, let's talk, but when it comes to agreements, well, Russian position in regards to Ukrainian crisis is well known. Russian president was very clear what Russian vision of the roadmap towards the peace, sustainable peace is. Russian president make it public last year or year before, even in 2024, by the way, when he was meeting with high-ranking officials of Russian foreign ministry. And since then, Russian position have not changed. It's still the same, right? So Russian take is well known. And if West is serious about the escalation, they have to come up with a plan that coincides with the Russian take on the roadmap towards the peace, which includes, of course, root causes of this crisis to be addressed. And that means Russian security concerns has to be acknowledged by the Western ruling class and respected. That's it. Anyways, let's continue with some other news. And somewhat surprisingly, German Chancellor Merz, by the way, stated that Russia's consent is necessary for the introduction of NATO troops to Ukraine. And I'm saying surprisingly because lately Western ruling class is acting, and you have noticed it, isn't it? They are acting in a way if Moscow is not even exists, right? They are conducting some talks, negotiations, then they are making statements that they have agreed almost completely on a peace plan, and they are about to implement this peace plan. And me and everyone else who is paying any attention to this are wondering, what the hell is wrong with these people? Man, Moscow is not there. Moscow is not present. No one is consulting with Moscow. about any of it, right? And these idiots are talking about finalizing peace and how close peace is, right? And the escalation. It's just insane, right? It's insane. And maybe, I don't know, maybe some advisor told Merz that, this is ridiculous what European leaders are doing, and maybe some little adequacy will be helpful. And Merz went to say that, you know what, we can talk a lot about deployment of our troops here and there, but if Moscow is against it, then, we need their consent. Which is true, by the way, and which is true. And Moscow was very clear that any NATO troops on a Kiev-controlled territory will be a legitimate target for Russian side. Moscow's position is already very clear on this matter also. But nevertheless, let me give you some details of Merz's statement. So German Chancellor Friedrich Merz emphasized that the deployment of international forces in Ukraine is impossible without Russia's approval, pointing out the difficulty of obtaining such a consent. The formation and deployment of a multinational force to support security guarantees in Ukraine is impossible without Russia's consent. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz stated that at the press conference, according to RIA Novosti. He stated that a clear order is needed to implement such steps. First, ceasefire, then security guarantees for Ukraine, and only then a long-term peace agreement with Russia. You see, by the way, on one hand, Merz is trying to demonstrate a little adequacy. He's saying that, well, we need Moscow's consent, acknowledging at least, right, that Moscow exists. But on the other hand, he is still pushing for this ceasefire narrative, right, which is a break, basically. That's what it is, right? Western ruling class is desperate for a break in this proxy war that they are waging against Russia. Proxy of the Western ruling class in Kiev, this proxy regime is also desperate for a break. And most importantly, Kiev regime's forces are desperate for a break. And this is the reason why every now and then this topic of ceasefire is being pushed forward again, right? But on this matter also, Moscow's position is very clear. If anybody in the West, among Western ruling class, pays any attention to what Moscow has to say, well, Kremlin's position is clear. No NATO troops, no, under whatever disguise, is acceptable on Kiev-controlled territory, right? And if NATO countries will deploy their troops, so we will take them out because we will greet them as a legit target. Period. Right? There is nothing to discuss there. And Moscow was also very clear that Russia is interested in sustainable peace, not in a temporary solutions like a ceasefire and that kind of stuff, because West will use this possible ceasefire to rearm, reorganize itself, also their proxy Kiev regime and its armed forces, right? And then resume their confrontation. So Moscow will never agree on that. It's all clear, by the way. It's all clear from Russian side, right? But anyways, they continue to push all sorts of crazy narratives, by the way. But it is nevertheless somewhat surprising that for whatever reason, Merz decided that, yes, he have to demonstrate a little bit of sanity while acknowledging existence of Moscow and the necessity of Russian consent on deployment of any freaking troops on a Kiev-controlled territory. Something different, isn't it? Something different. You not see sanity from Western ruling elites that often. Very rare occasions, right? TASS news agency is also reporting that, well, there was an article in Times, by the way, British propaganda outlet, and it is quite interesting that on one side, British elites, French elites, they love to brag about how tough they are, right? On one hand, they are trying to promote idea that Russia is weak. Remember Rutte and his statement, Secretary General of NATO, when he was saying that compared to NATO, Russia is weak. Russia is nothing. Russian armed forces is a different league and not even close. Same time, very same Rutte and his colleagues are pushing the narrative that Russia will attack NATO either today or tomorrow or day after, right? This is constant narratives that quite contradicting each other, right? But because they're not being challenged, no one is asking questions. In Europe, well, they are able to push whatever narrative they find they're comfortable at any given time, right? So on one hand, there is this gameplay on the part of London and Paris and some others that they are tough guys, right? They are tough guys. On top of the game, they have these great militaries and stuff. On the other hand, they are threatening their own people that Russia is coming. Day after, they are saying to their people that Russia is very weak, right? And same time, they are acknowledging that we might not be able to deploy militaries and confront Russia, even though that's exactly what they were saying day before. And this article in Times exactly about that, at least partially or indirectly. So Britain and France might send up to 15,000 troops to Ukraine. That's their latest plan. So Britain and France could send up to 15,000 troops in Ukraine if a peace agreement is reached there. This was reported by the Times newspaper, citing sources. The publication recalled that the British military had previously proposed sending 10,000 troops as a part of a broader coalition of wheeling of 64,000, but the UK Minister of Defence deemed such a plan impractical given the current size of its army. And I remind you, dear friends, that the British Army, according to reports that I have seen, is less than 70,000 in total. Less than 70,000 in total. They will last on the battlefield. If you take an entire British Army and send on any of the sectors, by the way, right? In Zaporozhye sector, in DPR or Kharkov direction, Dnipropetrovsk region, if you take entire freaking British Army and deploy it right now on a battlefield in any of the sectors, well, 65, 70,000 troops. Obviously, all of them cannot be deployed. But let's say UK managed to deploy at least 70% of its military personnel, about 50,000 troops. You think how long they're going to last on the battlefield? I mean, it is realistic to think that they will last on the battlefield more than 3 months. 3 months is quite a lot, isn't it? I don't think they will last that much. Entire freaking British Army, man. 3 months, they are finished, right? Same can be said about French Army, which is a little bigger than British Army, but nevertheless, none of them have a real experience of modern warfare, right? Neither of this army have any experience in high intensity conflict. None of them know nothing that will be useful for them in a war against Russia, right? Even if they are deployed completely, right, to the battlefield right now, today. So how long they gonna last, man? Maybe a few months max, right? Max, man. And I'm being quite generous here in this time frame, I think. In reality, maybe a couple of weeks, and half of their army will run away. Another half will be either destroyed or in such a stress that they would not be able even to move. Honestly, man, right? And I'm not necessarily mocking the British and French armies, by the way, although I'm doing it. But I think I'm very close to the truth, very close to the exact scenario that would happen if entire British and French armies are actually deployed on the battlefield, right? So that's what I think, honest opinion, by the way. But yet again, what about Moscow's position? That's what is quite fascinating, isn't it? That neither Western ruling class, with very few exceptions, neither Western propaganda outlets, in this particular case Times, are acknowledging existence of Moscow and the existence of Russia's concerns, right? Security concerns and Russian positions on major topics, including on a topic of deployment of foreign troops, especially NATO troops, on a Kiev-controlled territory. Russia will obliterate them, right? And let's be real here. Neither France, neither UK are in a position to sustain a war with Russia, man. Either alone or together. If you add Germany to this group, if you add Italy to this group, Poland to this group, by the way, they cannot sustain war with Russia. They just cannot, right? For many reasons. So when they gonna face the reality and start acting based on reality, not on their own projections, not their own delusions, but on the reality? What 15,000 troops, man? What 15,000 troops they gonna deploy, man? Where? Crazy. Only way NATO troops will end up on the territory of modern Ukraine, this former Soviet Republic, is if and when, by the way, Russian troops will reach the borders of the Western Ukraine, right? And Ukraine will be divided between their two sides, right? The western parts of Ukraine, as I said many times before, I think eventually will end up being reclaimed by Poland or Hungary, Romania, maybe Slovakia will have some say in that too. And these countries, all of them are NATO countries, right? So once they will reclaim western parts of Ukraine, those territories gonna end up in NATO, and NATO will eventually deploy troops there, right? But that's a whole different story. This might only happen when political agreement are being reached between the West and Russia on a matter of division of Ukraine, right? And when it comes to rest of the territory east of Western Ukraine, it's going to be controlled by Russia. It will join Russian Federation, not just from Kharkiv to Odessa, by the way, but Kiev. This one of the oldest Russian cities, by the way, will also join the Russian Federation. Mark my words, by the way, this conflict will end when the Russian troops will reach borders of the Western Ukraine. That's it. All the rest, by the way, all these talks, right? All this theater that Western ruling class is coming up with the talks and negotiations and this and that, all of it is a BS, right? In reality, I'm quite sure this conflict will end with the capitulation, with the formal capitulation of the Western ruling class before Russia, and the full-scale disintegration of Ukraine, when the western parts eventually will be controlled by and reclaimed by a number of NATO member states, and the rest of the territory will join Russian Federation. If you would ask me like 2 years ago, I would say, you know what, maybe there is a slight chance, like 1%, that Turkey and surrounding couple of regions will maintain a landlocked quasi-statehood exclusively in a Russian sphere of influence. But now I will say, you know what, no, it makes no sense. It just makes no sense. The Western ruling class will still try always to use this quasi-state, to infiltrate this quasi-state, and then to use it against Russia anyways. So why would we allow this risk to exist? So let's liberate all of it, by the way, right? And bring it to Mother Russia. That's what is going to happen, I think. But yes, for time being, we are just we have no option but to pay some attention to these crazy statements of the Western ruling class, crazy plans that they have, including in terms of deployment of their troops, by the way, to deter Russia. In this article, by the way, there is also, to continue, there is also mentioning that two military sources told the Times that London could ultimately deploy fewer than 7,500 troops, with the rest of the contingent coming from France. At the newspaper sources note, even the overall figure of 15,000 people appears optimistic. So now you judge for your own, by the way, when even Western propaganda outlet, by the way, Times, is saying that even deployment of 15,000 troops on Ukraine-controlled territory sounds like too optimistic. Then, I mean, you tell me what is the real state of either British or the French armies. I can tell you one thing. There was some time ago, by the way, French was planning to deploy entire brigade, right, in Romania, and they are still deploying that brigade. They started it like, I don't know, man, a year ago or something. They were unable to deploy even a single freaking brigade, which is like 4 or 5,000 troops, due to logistical issues, due to a lack of training among their personnel, due to many reasons, right? One of them, which is that, infrastructure, by the way, in Eastern Europe is a bit different than in Western Europe, right? Infrastructure in Eastern Europe, including bridges, by the way, tunnels, and so on, were built based on, let's say, military equipment that they had, Soviet and their own. And their Soviet military equipment and also military equipment that was produced by Eastern European countries usually were focused more on the lightweight, right? Agility, lightweight and agility, right? While Western school was a bit different, right? They did not really care that much about making lightweight vehicles. That's why their tanks are freaking 70 tons and higher, right? Their armored personal carriers are almost the same weight as Russian tanks, by the way. So therefore, one of the reasons why France was struggling to deploy its freaking brigade, because they had to build the freaking bridges, by the way. I'm not joking. They had to build new bridges in certain areas because existing ones would not be able to withstand this heavy military equipment, heavy tanks, and so on of the NATO, after France, right? So I think times, at least definitely on point, when they say that even deployment of 50,000 troops seems to be a bit optimistic. I think this is true. I don't think both of them are really capable of deploying 15,000 troops, let's say in 2 weeks' time. I mean, not happening, man. Not happening. No way, right? Even in a month. No, they're not going to be able to do so. Give them 2-3 months, they will struggle, right? If you give them a year, maybe they will eventually succeed in that. I would like to see, this process when they are bringing like platoons, any given time, and they just sent platoon, and before second platoon arrived, first one was eliminated, and then second then eliminated, and third, and holy moly, man. But yes, these idiots still are dreaming about deploying their troops, by the way, which is insane, right? And if you take in account that Western ruling class is cornered somewhat, right? They cornered themselves, isn't it? They might actually go ahead, by the way, with their provocations that eventually will cause direct clashes between Russian and their NATO militaries, and we all know how that will end, isn't it? We know how that will end. Russian militaries can take on any European army anytime, right? Russian militaries can take on armies of entire Europe and will neutralize them anyways, right? Only if US is and we are talking about conventional weaponry, right? Conventional weapons and stuff. If US is engaged, that will change the picture slightly, right? And will increase risk of such conflict spiraling out of control and eventually provoking a full-scale nuclear war. So US's involvement in direct clashes, open clashes with Russia, definitely changes the picture. But Europe, no, man. European armies are freaking joke, man. You might like it or not. You might agree with me or not, but European armies are freaking joke, man. I'm telling you. And I have read quite a lot of stuff about it, man. It's a freaking joke. On the paper, they have best equipment, best planes, best tanks, best this and that. In reality, it's a bit different. It's a bit different, right? Anyways, dear friends, let's continue with some other news. And Venezuela, of course, we have to talk about Venezuela because it definitely does make headlines. And of course, Russian media outlets are paying attention on the matter. So US gets everything it wants from Venezuela. Trump stated once again, make it clear for everybody that Venezuela is a now colony of the US. Many officials in the West don't like to talk in these terms. They are looking for ways to somehow downgrade their situation in regards to Venezuela. But even U.S. president is not bothered with the matter, right? How world will see his actions or the actions of the U.S. They are saying we are in control of Venezuela. They will do whatever we want, period, right? And that's exactly what colonies do, because colonies have no say in anything. Yeah, that's what is going to happen, at least for the time being, until we will see armed resistance of the Venezuelan people. And this armed resistance is going to happen. It's only a matter of time. And the people of Venezuela will realize that they've been betrayed by their own elites, right? And they will take up arms to fight for their liberty, for their freedom, for the sovereignty of their country, right? Because more and more people in Venezuela will realize that their country is being run now by U.S. proxy regime. That's what Rodriguez's government is, U.S.'s proxy regime, right? You might don't like it, but that's just factually accurate observation. Anyways, let's go through some news here. Washington is getting everything it wants from their new authorities in Caracas, U.S. President Donald Trump declared. And if this statement of Trump is not indicator that Rodriguez's government is a U.S. proxy, then I don't know what can be, right? Some quotes here from Trump. Everything we wanted, they give us, he said in an interview with the Fox News. The Venezuela operation allowed the U.S. to obtain $4 billion worth of oil in a single day. The White House chief noted that the U.S. plans to earn trillions of dollars from its sales in the future. Trillions, by the way. He actually said that. He also announced that the negotiations would be held on Friday with the representatives of 14 local oil companies who would help restore the Latin American Republic's raw materials sector by spending at least $100 billion. I reported about this earlier, by the way, that according to some experts, to rebuild their energy sector, oil sector in Venezuela, investments have to be in dozens of billions, right? Or maybe up to 100 billion. And it is the case. And it might take not just a year, not just 2 years, but up to 10 years, Father. Up to 10 years. So this recolonization of Venezuela is there to stay, based on plans that our American ruling class has. It's very different what people of Venezuela think about it, and I think that it's only a matter of time, weeks, days, weeks, maybe a couple of months, and we will see armed resistance taking place. But nevertheless, Washington has a plans to stay there for a long period of time, and basically steal trillions of wealth from Venezuelan people. And I can give you videos, by the way, of Trump's statements on the matter. For example, look at this. That's about oil that he's talking about here.
And billions of dollars worth of oil. And it'll be hundreds of billions of dollars. It'll be trillions of dollars. But we're going to be there till we straighten out the country. We'll see how the country's doing. But we'll be running the oil.
You see? He's quite direct. They are expecting to steal trillions of dollars of wealth from their Venezuelan people, which is crazy, isn't it? And they are saying it openly, right? And Trump himself, I believe, said that he don't cares about international law. He said it openly, but he don't cares about international law. But it is what it is, right? So let's continue with some other news, dear friends. It's already hour. This live stream. I will try to be faster to go through other reports. And by the way, yes, Nobel Peace Prize. Trump is being Trump. He might actually take a Nobel Peace Prize that was given to this Machado individual by the Nobel Committee. During the interview with Hannity, he was actually asked about Machado's Nobel Peace Prize. Hannity said that Machado would love to give this prize to Trump. And rumors are circulating, and American propaganda is actually talking about this break between Trump and Machado, mentioning that Trump was upset with Machado because she took Nobel Peace Prize, did not rejected it, and did not say that Trump should get it, something like that, right? And maybe Machado was told that, you know what, maybe you give this Nobel Peace Prize to Trump, and maybe he will allow you to play some role in Venezuela or something, right? And this will probably happen, man. It's a bloody circus. What is going on, right? It's a bloody freaking circus, and let's listen what Trump himself has to say about it, man.
Country's now based on merit again.
Let me ask you about Maria Corina Machado. She said to me this week, both on TV and radio, that she wants to give the Nobel Prize, her Nobel Peace Prize, to you for liberating her country. Do you have any plans to meet with her? And would you accept the Nobel Prize she wants to hand to you?
Well, I understand she's coming in next week sometime. And I look forward to saying hello to her. And I've heard that she wants to do that. That would be a great honor. I did put out 8.
You see, that would be a great honor. He intends to take Machado's Nobel Peace Prize, by the way. How sick is that? It's a Nobel Peace Prize that worth nothing, actually, after it was given to Obama. Since then, if anybody has any respect to that prize, I mean, sorry, but nevertheless, it was given to Machado for political reason, obviously, reasons and stuff, right? Nobel Committee is completely corrupt and stuff, of course, but nevertheless, it was given to Machado, and just because Trump will take it from her will not make him a Nobel Peace Prize laureate, right? What is wrong with this guy, man? I don't know. This is just too freaking embarrassing, isn't it? Should be for whole of America, man. I'm telling you, this is insane. Just listen what he's saying once again, man. It's crazy. And she is going into White House. She will have a meeting with Trump next week. He said it, isn't it? So next week you're gonna have Trump with the Nobel Peace Prize. Crazy.
And I look forward to saying hello to her. And I've heard that she wants to do that. That would be a great honor. I did put out 8 wars. 8 and a quarter, because, you know, Thailand and Cambodia started going at it again. So in theory, you should get one for each.
No, this is insanity, by the way. This is freaking crazy, man. I don't know. It's quite embarrassing, but it seems like Trump don't has a single, like, normal, adequate advisor around him or something, right? Because he's acting too crazy. He's a U.S. president, man. This is just too freaking embarrassing. Unbelievable, man. A few more news, dear friends, and I will end this live stream on that, and then I will continue to work for the next episode of Behind the Scenes for my Patreon and Boosty pages. And dear friends, you know, if you can always support my work by subscribing to my Patreon and Boosty, where I have extra content on regular basis, including news segments, by the way. So also interesting news, dear friends, that according to Bloomberg's report, U.S. spy chief Tulsi Gabbard was excluded from Maduro plan over her past views, which is also insane, isn't it? This clearly gives you understanding of state of U.S. institutions, right? How she is a spy chief, right? She should oversee all the intelligence agencies of the U.S., and there is like 24 of them, right? And this person, just because in the past she said something that Trump did not like her, this person was excluded from the conversation. What the hell? And if true, why she is not being fired if Trump has no trust of Gabbard, or why Gabbard herself is not resigning? Why? I don't know, man. She was so beloved, by many people in US and outside of US, I can tell you, right? She was well respected at some point, right? And I don't know what happened with her. It's so sad, man, to see decline and degeneration, professional degeneration of this person, Tulsi Gabbard. She was quite a promising politician, I think, like 4 or 5 years ago, or it seemed like, and her decline is something of extraordinary for sure. But nevertheless, let me give you some details. So Bloomberg reports that the White House shut the director of their national intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, out of a month of planning to kidnap Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro, citing concerns that her past opposition to the US military intervention cast doubt on her willingness to support their operation. Her exclusion was so widely known inside the administration that aides joked her title, DNI, stood for Do Not Invite. I mean, this is, you cannot make this shit up, isn't it, man? This is just really something beyond anything that is closely related to normalcy, right? This is crazy, total insanity. But nevertheless, also interesting news that our US Senate, by the way, uphold their ban on the US military involvement in Venezuela. Even if this means anything for Trump and his team, but nevertheless, legally, US president has no right now to continue with this military operations in Venezuela, right? So US Senate, in a procedural vote, approved the resolution banning the participation of American troops in military action against Venezuela without congressional authorization. The initiative, sponsored by Democrats Chuck Schumer, Tim Kaine, and Adam Schiff, and Republican Rand Paul, was supported by 52 senators, with the 47 opposing. Once the procedural hurdle is overcome, the resolution can be submitted to full Senate for consideration and vote. And we don't know what's going to happen then, but it is interesting that, yes, first and foremost, due to internal confrontation between Democrats and the Republicans, but nevertheless, at least there is some opposition of this craziness that White House is demonstrating on the world stage, with the kidnapping of Venezuelan president, with the bombing of sovereign nation, with the constant execution of fishermen and God knows whom else by U.S. militaries in the Caribbean and elsewhere, with the constant hijacking of the oil tankers and stuff, for piracy, state piracy, basically, that's what it is. At least there is some objection inside the US Congress, Senate, upper house in this case, but will it be enough to bring White House to its senses? I don't think so. Trump is clearly operating in emperor mode, or wannabe emperor mode, and he's not going to back down, man. He will continue to operate this way, and because there is must be certain forces in US, right, influential forces that wants things to be this way. I think there is risks that Trump might actually impose emergency all over the country, by the way, to postpone midterm elections, because they're going to lose, by the way. There is no way they're going to maintain majority in the Congress, right? And maybe there will be some false flag operations, or I don't know, man, something going to happen. And Trump will use that to impose maybe even martial law or something, right? To cancel elections. I would not be surprised at all, because he is clearly in a wannabe emperor mode now, and what is stopping him to go ahead and secure for himself without any elections another 4 years, man, and secure throne of emperor for his replacement, for, I don't know, J.D. Vance or Rubio or whomever. U.S. is in emperor mode right now, for sure. And U.S. officials, including U.S. president, is publicly, openly saying that they don't care about international law. They don't care about UN. They don't care about anything, right? They will do whatever they think is good. That's all. Anyways, of course, we have to talk about Iran, by the way. There is massive uprising, massive demonstrations. In many cases, violent demonstrations in many regions of Iran, and I think maybe first time since I have seen all these demonstrations in Iran in years, by the way, maybe first time I'm thinking now that a regime in Iran might fall, actually. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, by the way, on that, but seems like this unrest in Iran is only escalating, at least for now, right? And security forces unable or unwilling to deal with the situation in a way that will bring this violence down, right? Maybe they don't want to use violence, right? This could be one of the reasons why these demonstrations are gaining momentum. But in any case, the first time I am actually considering possibility of regime change in Iran to be realistic. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but something big is happening there. And U.S. President Donald Trump shared their, as you can see, dear friends, on your screen right now, shared their link to one of their videos on YouTube and commented, over 1 million people rally Iran's second largest city under protesters' control. Regime forces leave, he said. And second, he did not mention the city, but second city in Iran by population is Mashhad, right? 3 million plus people are living there. And if these protesters establish control over the second biggest city, that's a big deal, obviously. And if security forces flee, by the way. And as I said, in many cases, these demonstrators are extremely violent. I'm quite sure they are led by Western assets. They are led by Israeli and Western assets. They are ones that pulling the strings, directing their narratives in Iran among this crowd of demonstrators. And in many cases, they are extremely violent. I have seen videos, by the way, that I cannot share on either on YouTube or Rumble, but they were executing on the streets, by the way, representatives of security forces of Iran, literally beating to the death whoever they were able to capture. So extreme violence, nothing to be said about weapons being used, flamethrowers being used, and so on. I have shared videos of that, right, earlier. So, I don't know, man. I'm not there in Iran. I don't know what is going on, but I think there is a probability that we might see a regime change happening in Iran. And if anybody thinks that will be good for people of Iran, are very much mistaken, because I'm quite sure, by the way, Western ruling class and their allies, they are not planning to make life for Iranian people easier. What they do plan is to destabilize Middle East on regional scale, right? To provoke regional war on a sectarian and ethnic lines. And their main goal is to shut down navigation in the Persian Gulf. And one of the ways to achieve this is to destabilize and provoke violence on ethnic and religious grounds, not just inside the Iran, by the way, but elsewhere too in the region, right? To make sure that destruction of the navigation in the Persian Gulf will be a long term. And they want this to cut off Global South from Middle Eastern energy sources, to cut off Chinese economy from Middle Eastern energy sources, right? Their eventual plan is to force then China to increase its dependence on Russian energy towards the critical level, and then provoke tensions between China and Russia and force China to basically escalate with Russia. Western ruling class eventually wants to provoke war between China and Russia and deal with their major opponents like that. But this is topic for different discussion, obviously. And yes, dangerous situation. What can I say? And I don't know, man. I don't know. People are making such a big mistake in Iran. They're gonna as it happened in Syria, by the way. People gonna regret that they participated in this anti-constitutional activities, as many people in Syria regretted, because they were used, their juster anger, their juster opposition or just demands and their just opposition to certain policies of the government were used by outside forces to pursue their own agendas, right? And what happened in Syria, we know. And if anybody thinks anything better gonna happen to Iran in case Western ruling class is succeeding, then I don't know, man. I would sell to that person Himalaya mountains. Anyways, that's the Iran bigger massive escalation that is taking place. And by the way, now when US is in charge of Venezuela, Western ruling class can be somewhat sure that they can minimize impact on Western economies when they will shut down navigation in the Persian Gulf, because theoretically speaking, they will have tremendous reserves of the oil, right, that they can extract from Venezuela. And US has refineries, by the way. US since forever has refineries that are specialized exactly on Venezuelan oil, right? So they're gonna be no massive shortages in the Western world of oil and oil products, I guess, right? That's the calculus probably of the Western ruling class. And that's why operation in regards to Venezuela took place in the way it took, right? US did not remove everybody from there because they are short on time. They remove Maduro and now they're gonna keep in check everybody that is left there, right? To make sure that their time not gonna be wasted on oil, to take as much oil as possible, right? And it's all linked to Iran and the Middle East. I'm quite sure about it. I remind you that there is escalation between Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates too, and they are basically engaged in a proxy war on Yemeni territory now, killing each other's assets, basically. There are tensions, obviously, between other regional countries, Saudi Arabia and Qatar, and then it's a very complicated situation, isn't it? Very complex, and the Western ruling class is clearly escalating the situation to eventually to shut down navigation in the Persian Gulf and take a tremendous strike on global South, emerging multipolar world, and first and foremost Chinese economy. And I'm afraid they might succeed in that. They are quite close to it. RT is also reporting that ceasefire was reached between Damascus regime and the Kurdish forces that were engaged in heavy clashes in and around Aleppo. For how long? Only question I have, for how long this ceasefire will stay? For a day or two, or a week or two? But eventually sides gonna resume clashes, no doubts about that. Also, according to reports, Trump team discussed their payments of up to $100,000 per resident of Greenland to pursue them to break away from the Denmark. Reuters report, citing sources according to agency, initiative shows how US could try to effectively buy the islands of around 57,000 people, despite Copenhagen, or Denmark, by the way, insisting that Greenland is not for sale. And US Treasury definitely can print, by the way, another couple of trillions, right? And they might give each resident of Greenland $100,000. And I don't think they'll be able to buy everybody, but $100,000 is quite a lot for Greenlandians, and by any means, by the way, anywhere in this world, right? $100,000 is quite a lot of money. So they might be able to buy off most of the population in Greenland, then push for independence of the island from Denmark, recognize their independence, and then just take it. Forcefully or through political means, but they can actually do this, right? They have all the technical means for that. So yes, story around Greenland continues to evolve, and I have read quite a number of articles on the matter from European publications, and some of them are pushing this crazy narrative that Danish militaries will shoot first and think later. They are trying to intimidate Americans, or what? Publishing this kind of stuff, man. Do they really think that either Denmark or Danish militaries or militaries of any European NATO member state are in a position to intimidate either White House or their US militaries? Come on, man. This cannot be serious, right? But there are articles like that. Also, the Europeans gonna increase their military presence around Greenland and stuff. Is if it will make any change if White House decides that they are going in through military means, right? Not waiting no more, not wasting time. They are just going in and reclaiming and claiming the territory. No one gonna stop them, man. Literally, no one gonna stop them. Period. And also, dear friends, I think interesting news that Iraq is about to nationalize West Kurna 2 oil field operations, and this is one of the biggest oil fields in the world, certainly in Iraq, and it was a Lukoil, by the way. It was a Lukoil, Russian energy company, that was operating in this oil field. And after U.S. Illegal sanctions against Russian energy majors, Lukoil and Rosneft, both companies are considering to sell their foreign assets. And yes, they have to find the ways now, isn't it? And Iraqi government is in kind of corner now. They don't really know what to do. If Lukoil is struggling to continue operations due to these sanctions, and they are no foreign buyer of these assets right now, then they have to nationalize it, right? To continue the process of continue the work. And there may be, by the way, if Iraq will nationalize this oil field, if Washington will allow them to do this, maybe experts from the Lukoil will stay there. Maybe some sort of agreement will be reached between the two, and Lukoil will still be able to make some profits from the area due to its tremendous investments that Lukoil undertook in this oil field. They have every right now to expect profits for the investments, isn't it? So interesting story. It well might be that eventually these Russian companies, Lukoil and Rosneft, will find the ways to not necessarily sell off all their Western or all their foreign assets, which will inevitably cause significant losses, right? Because they're not going to be able to sell their foreign assets in the market price. Maybe they will find the ways not to make this sell-off and to somehow maintain involvement in this in work of these foreign assets. Could be case, by the way, and maybe Iraq is demonstrating the way how this can be done. I don't know. In any ways, the this is it for now, dear friends. This is it for now. Let me check some media outlets for potential breaking news for this moment, just to make sure that I'm not gonna miss any major development right during the stream. So, in the Belgorod region, by the way, Russian Federation, more than 550,000 people were left without power due to Ukrainian armed forces strikes on energy infrastructure. United States has released 2 Russians from the tanker Marinera that they hijacked day before yesterday. Although Caroline Lewitt, you know, their friends, Caroline Lewitt, press secretary of the White House, was threatening that her crew members going to be bring to a court and stuff like that. But they were released. They released her. Farmers in Belgium blocked their highways due to an agreement with Mercosur. Okay. Let me check TASS News Agency for any potential breaking news. Yes, Zakharova stated that Trump will release 2 Russian citizens from the Marinera crew. They've already been released, according to RIA Novosti. Medvedev, former Russian president and current deputy chairman of the Security Council, stated that after Venezuela, the US must recognize the legitimacy of Russian actions in the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. US should recognize the legitimacy of the Russian operation, and this recognition should come through NATO too. Okay. Axios is reporting that US and UK have agreed on a peace deal. Okay. What difference does it make? I mean, can anybody explain this to me? What difference does it make if Washington and this proxy Kiev regime agreed on anything? I mean, who cares, really? It's Moscow, right, that have to say final word. And Moscow's position is very clear. And very clear for years now, right? And yet again, this so-called peace deal that Western ruling elites come up with are anything but peace deal. It's absolutely non-starter. Anyways, dear friends, this is it for a news segment. Let me now switch to VPN again to check Rumble for. So I'm back. Now VPN is working. And let me check Rumble, dear friends, if there was any super chat. No, unfortunately, there was no super chat on Rumble. Also, there was nothing, by the way, through Boosty, and also nothing through PayPal. Otherwise, Anna would drop me a screen. So nothing there too. So okay. In that case, this is it for today's news segment. Later on, I will have a second news update in next episode of Behind the Scenes on my Patreon and Boosty pages. And dear friends, if you like my work, if you want to support, you can do it, of course, through several means. You can donate to this project through PayPal or Boosty, or you can subscribe to my Patreon page and page on Boosty, where I have extra content on regular basis. Links are on this video in description box and will be in the pinned comment out of the stream. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Great upcoming weekend, and take care. Bye for now.